in the beginning, you do end up doing a lot of fill-ins because you're all jazzed to do radio. So anyway, I remember doing a nighttime fill-in, like a late night fill-in one time. And I came in and I walk up to the on-air studio. And I look in the on-air studio and there's this guy who looks like a voodoo priest. And there are candles burning in the on-air studio and all kinds of like incense smoke and smoke perhaps from other things. And you know, the studio was like super dark. And I'm like, wow, I'm not in Kansas anymore. This is pretty wild. And it turned out that guy was Amir Rashid, who used to do a program on PKN called Wednesday Night at the Movies. If you listen long enough, you're gonna see something.
My daughter and Rod Richardson's daughter, we always say that she is one of the kids, and we know a few, who would probably not be alive today if it hadn't been for WPKN. Rod and I met at the radio station, first met in 1989, and we were married in 1998, and Genevieve came along shortly after that. And she's spent a lot of her early life at the radio station. And so I would bring Genevieve. She would be sitting on one of the counters in her car seat, and then she got a little bit older, and then she was walking around, and she loved the microphone. It was fun, and we would bring her on and let her. She could just, again, we're unscripted. If we have a 2-year-old in the room and the 2-year-old wants to talk, then the 2-year-old can talk, and so she would be on the microphone quite frequently.
When I was first starting out as a programmer, I was taking the overnight shifts because I had the time to do it. So one particular evening, this is in the dead of winter, it's probably about 25 degrees outside or so, I was in the middle of a mic break speaking into the microphone, and all the power went out in the station. And there are no windows at WPKN, with the exception of the one in Steve's office. So everything was completely dark, and by that I mean it was pitch black. Everything went out, and in the studio, the FM studio, it's all lights, it's all LED lights, and all the electric equipment is there. It all went out at once, so I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. So what I had to do was find my way out of the studio, basically. And as I was doing that, I saw one little glimpse of light, and that was the light coming through the peephole on the door of the studio. So I used that as my beacon, and I got to the door, opened the door. There were 2 of the safety lights on outside in the hallway of the school. So I reached behind me, got a couple of CDs, and I propped the door open, and then went back into the studio and found my phone, which I couldn't find my phone, actually. It was missing. It was somewhere. So I got my phone, and I kind of put everything into my bag, and I went out of the studio knowing that it's an electronic door, so when it shuts behind me, it's closed because I didn't have access since there's no electricity. Anyway, I got out to the parking lot. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. I looked across the street, and I see a couple of guys with hard hats, and I said, these guys probably know what's going on. So I went over there, and I said, hey, I'm with Bob Anderson. I'm with WPKN. I'm a programmer on the station. We have no power. And they looked at me and said, didn't you get the memo? And I said, no, what memo? They said, we turned the power off. The power's going to be off till 6 o'clock. So there was no power at the school at all, basically. The station was dead. So I texted Steve, and I texted Val, the program director, and the engineers, and said, hey, guys, I'm going home. So that was it. That was kind of the moment where I discovered that anything can happen at WPKN at any time, so you have to be prepared for anything.
There was one time when I was new on the air when somebody called up at 4 in the morning and said, hey, I'm listening to your show, and wow, I've got a great song that you would love to play on the air. I wish I could find a way to get it to you. And I said, well, why don't you put it on your stereo and hold the telephone to the speaker, and I'll put you on the air, and I'll let you introduce it, and it'll be great. And he said, great. And so I did it and said, hey, we've got a listener from Long Island. He's got a song for us. And, Joe, introduce yourself on the song, and let's see what it sounds like. And he said, all right, well, great. Well, yep, I've got this cool song by Charles Manson that was smuggled out of prison, and let me play it for you. And it was horrible. But it was even more horrible because it was Charles Manson. So I'm a little bit more careful now about what I let go on the air.
Well, the drum circles were organized by Terry Hopper, and they would occur at regular intervals. And the beautiful part of that was that people of all ages and capabilities would come in, and the drum circles happened across the hall in room 207, 209. And so they were this fun gathering that would happen from time to time. And, you know, what can be more lovely than a bunch of people beating on drums?